Ezekiel Thornfield was shining his favorite boots when he heard war drums booming through Cedar Canyon. He stopped, holding the cloth tight, as the loud thumps echoed off the canyon walls like never-ending thunder. Today was the day Catherine was supposed to arrive from Kansas City. Ezekiel had been living alone on his ranch for 3 years, building a life in a super remote valley in Colorado. The closest neighbor was 15 miles away, and he liked it that way until now. The drums meant trouble. The Kiowa war party, who'd been attacking towns 50 miles south, was heading north, and they were way too close. Ezekiel stepped onto his porch, his rough hands holding the wooden railing tight. The afternoon sun made long shadows across his land, but something felt off. His cows weren't eating grass calmly anymore. They were crowded near the barn, looking scared and jumpy. Even his dog, Marshall, was whimpering, his ears flat against his head. Ezekiel grabbed his dad's old spyglass from inside the cabin and climbed onto the roof. What he saw through it made his heart freeze. Dark figures moved along the ridge, at least 12, maybe more. These weren't just scouts or a small group. As he focused the lens, more shapes appeared, blocking every way out of the valley. It hit him hard. This wasn't just an attack they weren't passing through. 400 warriors, maybe more, had surrounded Cedar Canyon, turning his safe place into a trap. Ezekiel's throat felt dry as he thought about Catherine. Her stagecoach was supposed to arrive before sunset, coming right through the trail that was now dangerous. She had no clue what she was heading into. No idea that the man she agreed to marry without meeting was now the worst person to be near in all of Colorado. He climbed down from the roof, his mind spinning. The smart move would be to grab his horse and try to sneak out through the narrow creek bed on the east side, maybe slipping past in the dark. But that would mean leaving Catherine to face whatever awful thing awaited her when her stagecoach entered this deadly valley. The war drums got louder, more urgent. They weren't just saying, "We're here" anymore. They were planning something, getting ready. But Ezekiel didn't know that the leader of this war party had been watching him for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. Catherine's arrival wasn't random. Ezekiel loaded his Winchester rifle with shaky hands, counting his bullets 43 against 400 warriors. The math was scary and simple. He'd heard stories about what happened to lone settlers caught by war parties. This big, none of those stories had happy endings. He thought about Catherine's last letter, tucked in his shirt pocket. She wrote about how excited she was to meet him, about the new dress she bought for their wedding, about starting a new life in Colorado where no one knew her past. She trusted him to keep her safe, to give her the life she dreamed of. Now, he might get her killed just by being himself. The war drum stopped. The sudden quiet was scarier than the noise. Ezekiel listened hard, but even the wind seemed to stop. His cows stood totally still, like they were holding their breath. This was the calm before something awful. Then he heard it. Hoofbeats. Not a big charge like he expected, but the steady clip-clop of one horse coming from the south trail. His heart pounded as he realized what it meant. Someone was riding right into the trap, not knowing about the warriors all around. Through his spyglass, he saw the rider, a young Kiowa brave. But something was weird. The warrior held his hands up, with a white cloth tied to a stick, a sign of peace. The horse moved slowly, like the rider wanted to be seen from far away. Ezekiel's mind raced. In 3 years in this valley, he'd never dealt directly with any tribal war parties. He'd heard they sometimes took prisoners to talk or trade, but this felt different, more personal. The brave was heading straight for his cabin, like he knew exactly where Ezekiel was. The rider stopped 50 yards from the porch, close enough to shoot, but far enough to show he didn't want to fight right away. He was young, maybe 20, with war paint covering half his face. But his eyes caught Ezekiel's attention. They didn't look angry like he expected. They looked almost pleased, like everything was going as planned. The brave called out in rough English, "Ezekiel Thornfield, we need to talk." Hearing his name from this stranger sent a chill through him. Ezekiel stepped onto his porch, rifle ready, but not aimed. Talk about what? The warrior's lips curved, maybe into a smile. About the woman you're waiting for. About why we're really here. He paused, letting that sink in. About the choice you'll have to make when her stagecoach gets here in 2 hours. But what the brave said next turned Ezekiel's world upside down. Your bride isn't coming here by accident, Thornfield. She's coming because someone told her exactly when and where to find you. Ezekiel gripped his rifle tighter. What are you talking about? Catherine and I have been writing letters for months. She chose to come here. The warrior shook his head slowly. Letters can be written by anyone. The woman you think you know doesn't exist. He pulled a folded paper from a leather pouch. This is the real Catherine Morrison. She died of fever in Kansas City 3 weeks ago. Ezekiel's face went pale. The brave tossed the paper onto the ground between them. Even from a distance, Ezekiel could see it was an official death certificate. The woman he'd planned to marry, who wrote such sweet letters about their future, was already buried in Kansas. Then, who's coming on that stagecoach? Ezekiel's voice was barely a whisper. Someone who needs you to believe she's Catherine Morrison. Someone worth 400 warriors. The brave's eyes gleamed, almost like pity. Someone you've met before, though you don't remember her. Ezekiel's mind spun. Nothing made sense. Why would someone go through such a big trick? Who could be worth surrounding a whole valley with warriors? He thought back through his past, trying to recall any woman who might want to fool him like this. You're lying, he said, but his voice wasn't sure. Too many things were starting to add up. The letters had always seemed too perfect, too understanding. Catherine never asked about his ranch details or why he lived so far out. She accepted everything without the questions a real person would have. The brave went on. 3 years ago, you were a different man. You lived somewhere else. You did things that hurt people. He pointed to the ridges where the other warriors waited. She hired us to make sure you can't run when she gets here. She wants to look you in the eye when she tells you who she really is. Ezekiel's legs felt weak. There was a time before this valley, before he tried to be a simple rancher, a time when he wore a badge and made enemies, a time when his choices hurt people, even caused deaths. He thought he'd left that life behind, that 3 years alone was enough to pay for his mistakes. The sound of wheels broke his thoughts. A stagecoach is coming up the South Trail, just visible at the canyon's entrance. The woman inside thought she was meeting her future husband, but she was really coming to deliver justice that was 3 years late. The brave watched Ezekiel's face closely, like he was studying every feeling that crossed it. You still don't remember, do you? The warrior said. Sheriff Thornfield of Deadwood Creek, the man who put innocent people in the ground because he was too proud to admit. He was wrong. The words hit Ezekiel like bullets. Sheriff Thornfield, a name he tried to bury, along with the badge he threw into a river 3 years ago. Memories rushed back. The raid on the trading post, the family caught in the gunfire, the little girl screaming as bullets flew. He'd been so sure he was chasing the right men, so convinced he was bringing justice. But he was wrong, dead wrong. The Morrison family, Ezekiel whispered, the full horror hitting him. Catherine Morrison wasn't coming to marry me. She was already dead because of me. The brave nodded grimly. Her sister, Sarah, survived that day barely. She spent 2 years planning this moment, learning everything about you, tracking you down when you vanished. He pointed to the approaching stagecoach. She wrote those letters. She became Catherine in every way to get close enough to look you in the eye. Ezekiel's hand shook as he lowered his rifle. Sarah Morrison, he remembered her now. A 12-year-old girl hiding behind a flipped wagon while her family died in the dirt. He'd been too focused on chasing outlaws to notice his posses. Wild shooting hit innocent people. By the time he realized his mistake, 3 Morrisons were dead, including little Catherine. The stagecoach was only a few hundred yards away now. Through his spyglass, Ezekiel saw a woman's shape in the window. Sarah Morrison, now grown, coming to settle a 3-year-old debt. What does she want? Ezekiel asked, though he knew the answer. Justice. The kind you never gave her family. The brave's voice was cold, but respectful. She could have hired us to kill you. That'd be easier. But she wanted you to know why you're dying, to remember their faces when the end comes. The sound of wheels on gravel got louder. The driver was slowing down, seeing the cabin ahead. In minutes, Sarah Morrison would step out and face the man who ruined her childhood with missing bullets. Ezekiel thought about running. His horse was ready in the barn, but 400 warriors surrounded the valley. More importantly, he knew he deserved whatever Sarah had planned. He'd spent 3 years trying to forget Deadwood Creek, but the dead don't stay buried when the living won't let them rest. The stagecoach stopped in front of his cabin. The driver tipped his hat and called out happily, "Delivery for Mr. Thornfield. Got your bride here safe and sound." But what happened when Sarah Morrison stepped out would show that some wounds never heal, and some debts can only be paid in blood. The stagecoach door opened, and a woman stepped onto the dusty ground. She wasn't what Ezekiel imagined Catherine Morrison would be. This woman was tall and thin, with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes burning with pain that had lasted too long. She wore a plain travel dress, but the way she moved reminded him of a wolf circling its prey. Sarah Morrison looked so much like her father. It made Ezekiel's chest tight with guilt. Same strong jaw, same sharp blue eyes, same way of standing, like she'd never back down. The driver climbed down to unload her trunk, chatting happily about the nice weather and pretty views. He had no idea he'd just brought a woman to her family's killer, or that 400 warriors watched from the ridges. Sarah paid the driver and sent him off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She waited until the stagecoach was out of sight before turning to Ezekiel. Her friendly mask vanished, replaced by 3 years of bottled-up hate. "Hello, Sheriff Thornfield," she said, her voice steady. "Or do you go by Ezekiel now? I guess men like you change names as easily as you change towns." Ezekiel set his rifle against the porch railing. There was no point pretending. "Sarah, you've grown up. Amazing what surviving a massacre does to a person," she said, walking closer, each step careful and sure. "I was 12 when you rode into our trading post with your posse, guns firing, chasing shadows and calling it justice. The brave who brought the message stayed on, his horse watching like he knew how this would end." Behind him, Ezekiel saw more warriors moving into place along the canyon walls, not attacking, just there, making sure he knew running wasn't an option. Sarah stopped 10 feet from the porch. "I spent 2 years tracking you down after you left Deadwood Creek. 2 years learning to write like a lonely woman desperate for love. 2 years perfecting Catherine's voice so you believe every word." "Why?" Ezekiel asked, though he knew it was a dumb question. "Why not just have them kill me? Why go through all this?" Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Because a bullet would have been too easy, too quick. I wanted you to hope first, to think you'd found happiness, to believe you'd escaped what you did to my family." Her eyes shone with tears she'd held back for 3 years. "I wanted you to feel what we felt when your bullets hit us instead of the outlaws you were after." If you're liking this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more awesome tales from the Old West. But what Sarah said next would show the real depth of her plan and why she brought a whole war party to see this moment. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Ezekiel knew it right away. It was her father's Thomas Morrison's. He'd carved it himself to hold his most precious things. Seeing it in Sarah's hands made Ezekiel's stomach twist with new guilt. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" Sarah asked, her voice barely holding steady. "After the shooting stopped and you realized what your posse did." Ezekiel closed his eyes, the memory hitting like a punch. "I said I was sorry, that it was an accident, that we were chasing dangerous men, and that these things happen on the frontier." Sarah finished, "that my family was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That I should be grateful you caught the real outlaws before they could hurt anyone else." She opened the box, and Ezekiel saw something shiny inside. Not a gun, but something worse. Proof. "Except you never caught the real outlaws. Did you, Sheriff? You gave up after what happened to us. Decided it was too messy, too complicated, too much paperwork." The brave shifted in his saddle. Watching Sarah and Ezekiel like this was a play he knew by heart. This wasn't just about revenge. It was bigger. Sarah pulled a folded paper from the box. I found them, Ezekiel. The men you were chasing that day. It took me 3 years, but I found them. She unfolded wanted posters and sworn statements. They're still alive, still robbing, still killing, because you were too ashamed to finish what you started. The words hit Ezekiel harder than any bullet. In his guilt over the Morrison family's deaths, he ditched his badge and ran to the wilderness. He told himself it was punishment, that he was too dangerous to be a sheriff. But really, he was just a coward who ran from his duties. The Garrett gang has killed 14 more people since Deadwood Creek, Sarah said, her voice getting stronger. 14 people who'd be alive if you'd done your job instead of hiding in this valley to play cowboy. Ezekiel felt those deaths pile onto his shoulders. Killing innocent people by mistake was bad enough, but knowing his cowardice led to more deaths, more broken families, made him feel like he was drowning in guilt. Sarah held up another paper. This is a territorial warrant for the Garrett gang, still active, still valid. She looked at him with cold determination. You're going to help me finish what you started 3 years ago. You're going to help me hunt them down. And if I refuse, Ezekiel asked, though he knew the answer. Sarah pointed to the warriors around the canyon. Then my friends here will make sure you never leave this valley. But your death won't bring back my family, and it won't stop the Garrett gang from killing more innocent people. She stepped closer, her eyes burning. I want justice, Ezekiel. Real justice, not just revenge. The brave spoke for the first time since Sarah arrived. The choice is yours, former sheriff. Die here as a coward or live long enough to maybe earn a little redemption. But what Sarah revealed next about the Garrett gang's latest target would force Ezekiel to make the hardest choice of his life. Sarah pulled one last paper from the wooden box, her hands shaking just a bit for the first time. The Garrett gang isn't just hitting random travelers anymore, Ezekiel. They've gotten smarter, organized. She handed him a telegram from 5 days ago. They're planning to hit the children's train next week. Ezekiel's blood froze as he read it. Every month, a train carried orphaned kids from crowded eastern cities to new families in the West. 43 children, ages 6 to 15, would be on that train, defenseless kids looking for new homes and hope. The train stops in Millfield to take on water, Sarah said. Isolated station, no law for 50 miles. The gang knows the train carries a strong box with adoption fees and family payments. They don't care that kids will get hurt. The brave nodded grimly. We've been tracking the Garrett gang for weeks. They have 30 men now, well-armed and desperate. They've planned this raid for months. Ezekiel felt sick. More innocent kids, just like Sarah had been 3 years ago. More families broken because he was too scared to finish what he started. The pattern was clear. His failures kept causing more pain, more victims. Why come to me? Ezekiel asked. You could take this to the territorial marshal, the cavalry, someone with real power. Sarah's laugh was bitter. I tried. They said the information wasn't trustworthy because it came from tribal sources. They won't act on the word of Kiowa warriors, even when kids' lives are at stake. She pointed to the brave. Running Elk's people have been watching the gang, gathering proof, trying to stop this massacre. But white authorities won't listen. Running Elk spoke up. Our children have been taken on trains like this, stolen from their families, sent to boarding schools. We know what it's like when kids are torn from those who love them. His voice carried deep pain. We won't let more children die because grown men are too proud to work together. Ezekiel saw the full picture of Sarah's plan. This wasn't just about revenge for her family. She'd built an alliance between her quest for justice and the Kiowa's desire to protect innocent kids. She'd turned his guilt into a tool to save lives. The train reaches Millfield in 4 days, Sarah said. We can get there in 3 if we push hard. You know the Garrett gang's ways better than anyone. You know how they think, how they work. She paused, letting the moment sink in. You can't bring back my family, Ezekiel, but you can save those children. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the valley. Ezekiel looked at his cabin, his cows, the simple life he'd built to hide from his past. It all seemed pointless compared to 43 kids who'd die if he chose comfort over courage. But the choice he was about to make would decide if he died as the coward who ran from Deadwood, Creek, or as a man who finally faced his failures. Ezekiel walked into his cabin and came back out holding his sheriff's badge. He'd kept it hidden in an old coffee tin, unable to throw it away despite his shame. The metal felt cold and heavy in his hand, full of all his mistakes and missed chances to make things right. "I'll help you," he said, pinning the badge to his shirt. "Not because I deserve redemption, but because those children deserve to live." Sarah nodded, and for the first time, something like respect flickered in her eyes. "This won't make us even, Ezekiel. Nothing can bring back my family." "I know," he replied, "but maybe we can stop another family from going through what you did." Running Elk got off his horse and approached them. "My warriors will ride with the U.S. The Garrett gang has stolen from our people, killed our young men, taken our horses. This debt goes both ways." Within an hour, they were ready to leave. Ezekiel gathered his weapons, supplies, and best horse. Sarah changed into practical riding clothes and carried a rifle that looked well used and carefully kept. The warriors came down from their spots around the valley, a strong group united by their shared goal to protect innocent lives. As they rode out of Cedar Canyon together, Ezekiel realized Sarah's plan was perfect from the start. She didn't just want to kill him, she wanted to force him to become the man he should have been 3 years ago. The man who finished what he started. The man who protected the innocent instead of running from his failures. The alliance was odd and fragile. A shamed ex-sheriff, a young woman driven by justice, and a KO war party united to save kids they'd never met. But it was also strong. They had skills the Garrett gang wouldn't expect, knowledge they couldn't guess, and a drive deeper than greed. The ride to Millfield would take them through risky lands, past towns that might not like seeing armed Kiowa warriors. But Ezekiel felt hopeful for the first time in 3 years. Not because he thought he could earn forgiveness. Some mistakes were too big for that, but because he finally had a chance to use his guilt for something good. Sarah rode beside him quietly for the first few miles, then spoke softly. "My father always said good men weren't the ones who never messed up. They were the ones who found the courage to fix their mistakes, no matter what it cost." Ezekiel nodded, knowing this was as close to forgiveness as he'd ever get from her. It would have to be enough for 4 days later, when the children's train pulled into Millfield Station. It wouldn't just find the Garrett gang waiting to ambush it. It would also find a group of determined protectors ready to make sure that innocent didn't pay the price for evil men's greed. The man who'd once been too scared to face his failures was finally ready to be the sheriff he should have been all along. If you loved this awesome story of redemption and justice, subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales from the American frontier. Now, click the video on your screen to hear another exciting story about a stagecoach driver who found out his passenger was the most wanted criminal in 3 territories, but she was also the only one who could save his dying daughter. Click now.